Hello, and thank you so much for joining us for our first virtual Art Smarts. Today we're going to be talking about the artist Oscar Claude Monet, and I'm going to be showing you how to make watercolors at home or use watercolors that you already have and do an art project with crayon resist. And so we'll talk about that near the end of the program. But we're going to jump right in and get started and start learning some facts about Monet. Oscar Claude Monet was born in Paris on November 14th, 1840. Even as a child, he loved art. His father was a grocer and his mother a singer, and they encouraged his pursuit of art. And they sent him to a school in France called Les Havre to pursue his artistic talent. At the art school Les Havre, Monet became notorious for drawing charcoal caricatures of his teachers. You can see some examples on this slide. He would often fill his assignment books with drawings instead of completing his work. These first drawings became his first source of income. These also were one of the first things that made other people look at him as a true artist. Early in his career, Monet would paint still life paintings, that's of people or objects, and a lot of portraits. This is one of his first portraits, the woman in the green dress, and this is of his wife, Camille. Monet liked to paint in the open air, as the French would call it, and that became his primary art method. He would paint people and places out in nature. Here's another portrait of Monet's wife and their son, and it's out in their garden. And one of the things that I really like about this portrait is that to me, it's showing that Monet's style has subtly and begun to change. If you look, you can see that even in the clouds in the sky, the brushstrokes are starting to become visible, and the details are less defined as in other portraits that we have looked at. To me, this is showing that his impressionistic style is beginning to emerge. This sunrise painting that Monet created in 1872 is actually the first painting that gave the name Impressionism to the art style and movement. A critic who was looking at this painting and writing about it in the paper said that he got the impression of a sunrise, but he didn't see all the details. And that's what started that movement. That critic gave the name and gave Monet the title Father of Impressionism. Okay, so let's look at some real definitions of Impressionism. You'll see some dictionary definitions there, and it's about dabs or strokes of primary colors to simulate light. But I like in that white rectangle box down there by Tate Kids, Impressionist artists were not trying to paint a reflection of real life, but impression or a moment in time, the impression of what the person, light, atmosphere, or object or landscape looked like to them. That's why they're called Impressionists. They tried to capture the movement and a moment in life and show it to others. And that's something that we can do when we're creating art ourselves, is show a moment in time and what we feel about it and show it to others. Here's another really good example of Monet's art. It's called In the Garden in 1895. You can see that there are flowers and a path and a grass and a person there, but you're not looking at individual blades of grass or individual petals. You're seeing just brush strokes to create those color and light. Can you tell what this is a picture of? It may be blurry and the picture might not show up to you right away, but then you begin to see the water and leaves and lily pads. Notice how Monet added dabs of white to the painting to create light. This is titled Water Lilies 1916. We're going to look at about 4 different slides here of water lilies that Monet created, and then there are different times in his artistic career. This piece is his most celebrated piece and demonstrates the Impressionistic movement. Remember, Impressionistic artists wanted to capture moments in time. They would work quickly and try to capture light with swift brushstrokes. So the details might not all be there, but the picture is giving us an impression of what they're trying to show us. Okay, here's our next water lilies picture, the second one, and this is one of the earlier ones. Do you see the difference? Do you see the water? I see the reflection of trees in this painting. You have a more clear, defined picture of those water lilies. You can tell that this was an earlier work and not when he was in the midst of doing all of his impressionistic work. Okay, here's our third water lilies painting, and this one's done in 1915, just about a year or so before the first water lilies painting that we looked at. Can you tell what time of day it is or what the weathers might be like by looking at this? Do you get the feeling of where Monet might be? It looks to me like he's under a tree and you can see those leaves, maybe a weeping willow. From the white in the water, it looks to me like it might be morning. I can still see lily pads in the distance and right up close. And here's our final water lilies picture that we're going to take a look at. And think about those same questions. What time of day do you think this is? What's the weather like? It looks to me, I can still see that tree, maybe the weeping willow there, but it looks to me like it might be later in the day or dark or raining. I can still make out some of those water lilies with those pops of color there, and I can see the darker water, and that's what gives me the impression that it's later in the day and the weather might not be as pleasant as it was in the earlier slide. So Monet did a lot of paintings, not just of water lilies. Here's in A House Among the Roses. Can you see the house and the path and the roses? Think about those same questions. What time of day does it look like to you? What's the weather like? What does it feel like when you're looking at this? Can you imagine what it would be like to be walking up the path to this house? It's pretty amazing the things that Monet could accomplish with his paintings and portraits. Okay, here's another landscape or building painting that Monet did, the House of Parliament. Think about those same questions. What kind of time of day was it? What did you think it looks like? Take a look carefully at the sky and the ground. Do you see the different brush strokes that Monet used? There's some going one way to create the water, another that go in the sky, and still other shapes that make up that sun that we can see through the clouds. That first painting that gave the name Impressionistic movement was a sunrise. So I just wanted to make sure you saw a sunset. Do you think you can see the difference? That sunrise, we just saw one little orange dot of the sun, and the sunset here we see the vibrant colors going through the air and being reflected on the water. But you can still see all the brush strokes of how he used to blend that and how he made the light on the water and the reflections. It's pretty remarkable. Okay, these last two slides that I wanted to show you are of the same Japanese footbridge that was in his garden. And this first one is in 1899. You can tell that it's not when he was in the midst of doing all of his impressionistic movement. He has a lot of details in this painting. You can see exactly the path that's going over the water and all the trees and the grass and the lily pads and all of those things. And then we're going to look at the second slide, and this is later in his life, and there were some changes. Let's see if you can see what the changes might be. Here's that same Japanese footbridge, and if you look at the dates, you'll see that it's about 23 years after that original one that we just looked at. And this shows that something has changed in Monet. And as he got older, he developed cataracts, which are something that affects a person's vision. It created a cloudy area in his vision. And his color tones of his paintings changed from darker and more reds to compensate for the changes in his vision. He saw colors differently. You can still look at this painting, and we know because of the title of the painting what's supposed to be there and what he wants us to see. And you can see that footbridge in there, the impression of that footbridge and the water and the trees still. Take a second just to look at it and see if you can see those same details. So I hope you learned a little bit about Monet from those slides and got inspired by some of his works. And today, maybe you're ready to do an art project. And if you choose to do the art project with me today or at another time, you'll need watercolors, crayons, white paper, a paintbrush, and construction paper or tissue paper. Those are optional. That's if you're creating something and you want to make it 3D or something stand out, maybe a pond with lily pads or something like that. You might need those construction paper or tissue paper to do that. We're going to use crayons and watercolors to make a crayon resist painting, and our paintings can be inspired by the brush strokes and vivid coloring, just like Monet. If you don't have any watercolors at home and you want to make your own watercolors, I'm going to show you how to do that in a video that's going to follow this slide. And these are the ingredients that you will need: baking soda, white vinegar, light corn syrup, cornstarch, a mixing bowl, mixing spoon, an egg carton or ice cube tray, food coloring, and some stirring things. And the directions are there. And you can pause the video right now if you want to write these things down, or you can watch the video next and write it down then. Either way, I hope that you have fun making your own watercolors. Well, I hope you learned a little bit about Monet today. Thanks so much for joining me for our first virtual Art Smarts. On the screen, you'll see some titles that are available for checkout if you want to learn more about Monet. And stay tuned because there's a video coming up next that will show you how to make your own watercolors at home and a crayon resist project that you can do.
Okay, so we're all ready to make our watercolors to do our crayon resist drawing, and we're going to make some. You can use the ones you have at home, but if you want to do a fun project and you have these supplies, go ahead and try it. You'll need some baking soda, some vinegar, light corn syrup, cornstarch, some food coloring, a mixing bowl, and it doesn't have to be very big, some measuring spoons, and I used an old ice cube tray, but you could use like an egg carton or something like that. And then something to mix with, like spoons. I'm going to use some popsicle sticks just so I can throw away the trash and not make a big mess. All right, so in your mixing bowl, the first thing you're going to do is do 4 tablespoons of baking soda. So you're going to measure out your 4 tablespoons in here. I'm going to take this and measure out 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. And then I'm going to do some 2 tablespoons of vinegar. Now what's going to happen when we add the vinegar to the baking soda? It's going to get fizzy, so you're going to stir it with one of your popsicle sticks just until that fizz goes away. So there's 1, and it bubbles up. Don't keep adding it when it's all bubbly because then it'll go all over the place. So just wait a second, it'll go down, and then add your 2nd tablespoon. And it's going to do the same thing and bubble up, but just wait a second. And then use a popsicle stick or a spoon and just stir it up till it's smooth. So I'm just going to stir it and it'll keep bubbling away. And then I'm going to add a 1/2 teaspoon, just a little bit, of corn syrup. I'm going to take my corn syrup and add that in. It doesn't take a lot. And some of it got stuck there. All right, and then I'm going to stir that up until it's smooth. And then our last ingredient is that cornstarch. And for the cornstarch, we need about 2 tablespoons. So I'm going to get that in here and mix again. 1, 2. Mix, 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 and we want this to be smooth and pasty so that when you're painting on your paper, you're not going to get globby stuff. And this will take a little while to dry when we actually mix the colors in. So once you have it nice and smooth, you're going to go ahead and pour it into your container. So if you have an egg carton or a little thing like that, again, I use this ice cube tray. Anything you have will work just fine. You'll take that and you're going to pour it, I'd say in about 6 different containers. You're going to want it about halfway up if you're using like an ice cube tray. But you can use less if you want to do less, if you want to do more colors and less paint, you can spread it out and do more thinner layers. It'll dry quicker than these ones. So I just filled it about halfway, whatever you think. Then this is the fun part. You get to make whatever color of watercolors you want. So let's make a green in here, and a blue, and a yellow. And then you use your stirrers, and you stir those up till they're nice and mixed. You know how to do that. So just make whatever colors you want in those. And then you have to do the hard part, and that is that you have to wait for them to dry. The recipe that I got called for about a day. Mine took about 2 days, a little maybe more, but I've had them for quite a while, and I'm going to show them to you. There they are. They stay they stay in your ice cube tray nice, and they fit just fine. And if they come out, you can put them in another container, or you can just pop it back in. So when you're ready to do your project, now that we have our watercolors all done, you're going to get your white paper, and then you're going to get some crayons, and you're going to make whatever kind of design that you want. And I'm thinking about impressionistic art and Monet and his water lilies. So I'm going to choose to do some colors, but flowers and some water, but you can do whatever you want. So I'm not going to do really fancy anything. I'm going to use a couple different colors here of crayons, and just do some swirls to kind of make those flower feeling. Maybe I'll do a fish. Let's try a fish on here. And I think that I'll do an orange fish. And let's add some green for those lily pad feeling. I'm going to put some green around some of these. And then, again, I just did this in this amount of time. You can spend some time and do some nice drawings. What I do want you to notice is that we're going to color over this with watercolors. And so you don't want to make them solid paintings before you watercolor. You'll want to leave some white in there so that your paint shines through and the crayon resists the paint, and the crayon will pop out and you'll be able to see all the shapes that you've made. So let's give it a try. I have my cup of water and my paintbrush here. And I've had these watercolors, I think I said that. I've had them for a little while. They need a little bit of water. You have to add the water to them, and then you just paint just like you would with regular paint. And you'll see that they do a really nice job resisting on the crayon. I'm not sure in this kind of video if you'll be able to see what I'm talking about. Let me try a darker blue, so maybe in the video it'll show up for you. But when you do this, you'll get your own watercolors that you can make a kind of picture and design what you want. So I hope you enjoyed learning about Monet today. I hope you're inspired and make your own watercolors or use the watercolors you have and do some kind of artwork or art project today.